Welcome everyone to Congressional Cemetery. My name is Lynn, and I'm going to give you a tour today. We've been here since 1807 and formally incorporated in 1812 by Christ Church, which was at the time Washington Parish. Our first burial was in 1807, one of the stonecutters of the Capitol, and to my left over there is the oldest part of the cemetery. So we are 55 acres, and we're an active, growing cemetery. Unique in so many ways. We have a dog walking program and yoga programs. We've had goats cut our grass for us. It's an interesting place in many, many ways, and its inhabitants are the most interesting. So let's go. So in fact, we're having a wedding here today. When we get over to the chapel, maybe we'll get to see the bride.
How many weddings do you get a year?
Well, my director is with me now. I'm not sure. We've been a little slow this year because of the COVID. This couple, as I understand, have had a reservations for a whole year.
Oh, wow.
And they've had to cut down their guest list and everything. But it'll still be wonderful.
Look at that.
Talk about difference of materials. Whoops. Well, we'll keep walking. I was going to stop there, but we'll go there on the way back. So we're going to turn right here, and you'll see a big construction site right ahead of me. We're going to go right next to that and look at Matthew Brady's family plot. So as we walk by, I'd like you to, imagine you're feeling this. This is marble, and we call it sugaring. Marble is actually a very delicate stone, and if you could feel this, you'd know what was happening in Venice to all those beautiful statues. It's rough. It's like putting your hands over wet sugar. That's why they call it sugaring. Next to it, over here, is granite, and even the flamed granite is smooth. It's so much harder. So,
which material is better for long-term?
Well, I would say granite.
Granite.
There's some slates which are just as tough, but granite is probably the most common and easy to get.
And while we're here, let me introduce Ryan. Ryan is our docent in training, so she's here to ask all the tough questions. But if you have any questions, you can ask them in the chat box, and Lynn will answer them for you too.
Okay, good. So we're just going to walk up to that construction site there. We'll walk up just another row so we can avoid it. Okay, so we'll turn left.
The grass is certainly healthy with all the rain we've had.
Yes, it is. So this is the family plot of Matthew. Well, okay, let's talk about Matthew Brady, and then we'll talk about the construction. So this is Matthew Brady's family plot. If Sarah comes around, you can see Matthew Brady with his headstone, with his date of death is 1895. Friends of Matthew. That was actually a typo in terms of stone cutting. And this is his correct date, 1896. It's Matthew Brady's picture of Lincoln on the $5 bill. He was a very famous photographer. He actually took pictures of John Wilkes Booth for promotional shots, and he was a very handsome guy, Booth, that is. And his most important claim to his photography was his pictures of the Civil War at Antietam. Sorry, at Antietam. He went took all the pictures of Antietam, then went to New York to start a show, to open a show, and nobody came to the show, and he went bankrupt. So then he tried to sell the negatives to the government, who couldn't buy it because we were broke from the Civil War. So they're now luckily back in the Historic Trust, and we have access to them. So he was an important sort of first journalist to us.
I have a question.
Sure.
What are the objects on top of his tomb?
Okay, that's another interesting thing, which usually it's credited to a Jewish tradition of the fact that you visited the grave. But we also have a grave of Tajay, who's an Indian chief, which we'll go to. And I noticed that there are things placed there. I kind of always wonder if it was just where did that tradition start? It's now gotten to be a tradition of but basically it means you visited.
And for Matthew Brady specifically, people leave things like cameras or
Yes.
film, and you'll actually see some pennies as well, which have a picture of Lincoln on them. And so you see a lens, so they're all mostly camera-related, photography-related things.
Right. So then I wonder if you're wondering about this construction site. We don't have a rigid design criteria here at Congressional Cemetery. And this is going to be a new actually columbarium, and it's going to be, I understand it's going to be about 6 feet high and have the drawers for the families. And what they've done is laid the concrete slab, and it's on its way. So let's keep going. So I love to stop here at Miss Wood's grave. This is actually an exact copy of her china closet, which she loved, I understand, and had her monument fabricated just like this. And if you look inside, there's her ashes inside. And if you also look over here, that's a bullet hole. So until the late 90s, the cemetery had fallen into total wreck and ruin. Grass was up to your roots, up to your hips. People were doing drugs. And then someone got the great idea to start walking dogs in here and charging people to walk dogs. And from that moment on, the grass started getting cut. And for a while, we were on the most endangered list of historic sites. We are no longer on that. We're a treasured historic site on the historic preservation, and just because of that great idea. We might see dogs when we're walking around.
We're actually closed today because of the wedding.
Oh, we're closed today because of the wedding. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So let's keep going.
Oh, Lynn, I have a quick question.
Sure.
If you don't mind. Is there any conservation for these older tombs?
So yes and no. The Washington Navy Yard comes over once a year and does a lot. Well, I'll show you some of the, there's some grave sites called table stones, and they write, and they've fallen over, so they write them and fix them and so on. We'll see one. And
And that's in our day of service. We would usually have that but this year it's been canceled because of COVID, but they all come. It's like 200 volunteers.
Yes.
They help us do the hard, heavy lifting. But we have a regular director of conservation. So she's started up by the gatehouse, and she has a whole plan for the cemetery to keep it on a regular schedule.
Right. And the reasons, well, I'll talk about that too. The reasons some of these graves look in such, have fallen over and so on, is not due to vandalism, or it's mostly due to the failure of some of the materials. The pins under some of these stones were lead, and they corrode and fail. We do that differently now, so there's that failure rarely happens.
And a tombstone that's laying flat on the ground is actually safer than one that's kind of leaning at an odd angle.
Right.
7 degrees of leaning is dangerous. Anything more than 7 degrees is dangerous. So if you see one laying on the ground, it's a little bit safer down there than up. It's not in good shape.
Right. So let's keep going. We're going to head over to John Philip Sousa. But first,
Lynn, do you have a favorite tomb?
I sort of do. I actually like Miss Wood because I love to talk about the cemetery. There's some good stories all along that I love.
Yeah.
So it looks like, is the wedding over?
I don't think it's started yet.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll have to miss that part of the cemetery. So we'll stop here. This is our only bronze in the cemetery, and it's of a little 9-year-old girl who was very handicapped, and died very young. And her parents, and one of her things that she did lots and lots of the time was look at her finger. So the artist put a butterfly on her finger for her to be looking at. I think that's a lovely idea. And here's her little shoes back here. So it's quite a loving memorial.
Do we know who the artist was?
I do, but I'd have to look that up. Yes, I should have that on my mind. Great question.
And we have a comment from Facebook. Thank you for going to Sousa. My great-granddad was a bandmaster for him, and he loved working
With what?
He loved working with John Philip Sousa, his grandfather.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I hope he's not listening too hard in case I make a mistake. So we're heading there. So this is the family plot of John Philip Sousa. If you've ever been to a parade or a U.S. celebration, you've heard one of his marches. He was called the March King. And on July 4th, it's the Washington Post March that we hear, and then all the fireworks go off, and that's his composition. So he was quite an extraordinary man. He grew up in this neighborhood in Southeast Washington, which is very close to here, 10 or 12 blocks. So he was married and buried at Christ Church, part of our association. And so he started learning music from his father, who was in the Marine Band, at age 13, or at age 3 actually. And then at 13 he decided he would run away with the circus. So his father thought he was a bad boy and enrolled him in the Marines. And the rest, then he was incredibly successful. So this is his whole family plot. And when again in different times, schools come and stand here and play music in front of there and march off to their bus. But on his birthday, which is there, November 6th, that gate at the end of this road opens, and Marines in full dress uniform march up here very formally go to over there in back of his grave, play some of his marches. We have a birthday cake, and they march off. It's quite an extraordinary.
And we're going to try to do that via live stream this year. So the band will still come. There probably won't be any birthday cake, but people can tune in on.
Well, we can have virtual birthday cake.
Everyone BYO on the cake at home.
Right, right. So it's one of the lovely things, one of many wonderful reasons you should visit us. Let's keep going.
How many sites are here? How many gravestones?
Well, the last time I counted, there were 55,000. I think that number has grown a lot.
Yeah, so that's actually two different questions. The question was how many sites are there, how many gravestones? So there's actually, I think, about 65,000 people buried here, but
Okay,
only
that's
roughly 30,000 stones.
Oh.
There's like half as many stones. So don't quote me on the number. But yeah, so there's not every grave in here is marked.
Right, and there's one place where it will be where I know there's graves which aren't marked, but we can point that out. I don't know if they ever will be, but we've had a laser
Ground penetrating radar.
Yes,
That came and they drove the
yes.
little thing over all
right.
the graves.
So we know
Wow.
who's where.
Ah.
So
Yeah. 18th and 19th century records are not always the most meticulous. Yeah.
right. So this is such an interesting grave. Thomas Lantos. Again, Thomas was Jewish, but he was the only Holocaust survivor ever to serve in Congress. And we see all these stones here. Whoop. He was very famous. And I always point out his epithet on the back, which was incredibly meaningful for somebody like him.
How long did he serve in Congress?
He served like about 4 terms.
And is this marble? Is that right?
This is granite.
Or granite? Sorry.
Yes, so come over and feel it.
Oh, it's very smooth.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it'll stay like that forever.
Oh, wow.
And then when we see a marble one, we'll stop and pet it. So we're heading now to the Arsenal Monument. Brian asked if I had a favorite. Maybe this is a favorite.
If you ask that question to a lot of docents, it's ever which one is closest to them at that moment. They're like,
Yeah.
this one's my favorite. And then they get to the next one, they're like, this one's my favorite. They all have a lot of favorites.
Right. Well, this one has so much lore to it that I kind of love it. So this is the gate that the Marines walk down. So pretty soon we're going to turn right beyond this tree. So this is the Arsenal Monument, and it's a monument to 21 young Irish women who were killed making munitions for the Civil War. The picture that you see there, we've tried to renovate it, but what it is a picture of the building and smoke billowing out of the building, and it was a terrible accident that day. women were all seated at a bench, making munitions, making bullets and so on for the Civil War. And outside, outside gunpowder was drying, and it was a beastly hot day, and a spark started in the gunpowder outside and leapt through the window and then down that table. And the women still had big hoop skirts and couldn't get out fast enough. It was terrible. So 16 are buried here, 2 or 3 more right here in the yard in their families, and then the others in another cemetery in Washington. 2 of the women, Brian asked about Laura, 2 of the women apparently were fired that morning for singing. So they were sent home for singing. It was their lucky day,
Wow.
I would say. So these roses are special. When they're out, they're beautiful. There's bright red ones, which are Mr. Lincoln's, and bright yellow ones, which are Rose of St. Patrick.
Lynn, I noticed some of the sites have lots of greenery and flowers. Who takes care of the gardens, I guess?
Well, sometimes the families do. Sometimes we do.
So we actually have a program called Adopt a Plot, and you can come and you can, we have a number of sites identified where the families are no longer in the area or no longer here, so you can adopt a plot, take care of it. Especially fun for people who live in apartments but love to garden and don't have that green space, so you can come out, basically grow. We have guidelines, you can't grow anything. But you can come and garden and make it beautiful and take care of it. But you will notice that some of our sites are a little neglected, and that's because we have not been able to have those big volunteer groups in to help
Yes.
us come and take care of things. So it's a combination, but if you want to adopt a plot, you're more than welcome to come over and plant your plants and grow your garden.
Yeah.
Sounds like fun.
Well, it's fun. And I have done some work because I love to do that. I've also done some preservation work on the stones, which I love. So I just want to go around the corner here. So this is lavender. This is rosemary. Rosemary, which is the herb of remembrance.
Ah, love it.
Yeah.
Smells so good.
Somehow I always miss talking about, I call him Charles Preuss because he had the German name that you see, but somehow his name kind of morphed into Charles. I'm not sure why, but he went with John Fremont to explore and map the Oregon Trail. And they were actually the first ones to actually see Lake Tahoe. I'm saying more about John C. Fremont, but that's how Fremont, California got named.
And
So.
is this greenery for him?
No, it's someone else's. I believe this. Yes, I believe this other person's. Yes. But again, this is good because you're pointing out some wonderful things that we need to pay attention to. So let's keep going. So we're going to kind of go back the way we came.
Lynn, how long have you been a docent?
I've been a docent for, at least 7 years, probably more.
It's 2020 if that helps.
What's that?
It's 2020 if that helps.
2020, okay. I'll go with 7, but not sure that, time flies when you're having fun. It's whenever you're involved in kind of constant learning, and time goes so quickly. So the next path we see when we're going to turn right, and that's the Path of Remembrance.
Very apropos, since yesterday was 9/11.
Yes, yes, that's right. In the springtime, the trees that we're going to walk under are cherry trees, and it's a pink cloud. It's incredible.
Oh, beautiful. And for those planning ahead, we're about 2 weeks behind with the tidal basin. So if you want to head to the tidal basin, then you can plan on coming over here to see us at peak bloom as well.
I'd say, judging by the crowd at the tidal basin, here would be a way better choice. But they're all gorgeous. So this is a walk of remembrance, and there's a sign talking about 9/11, which Sarah pointed out we've just marked again for our 19th year. Can you imagine how this looks when you're walking down it?
I think it's beautiful every season, too.
Yes, I do
And
too.
the snow. Yeah.
Yes.
And Lynn, what are these stones on the side here?
That's just marking the path.
Oh,
This just, oh, and then you can buy these. These are, oh, sorry, they're all over here. You can buy a stone and have your name in it,
A brick engraved.
a brick engraved.
Yeah.
And there's some, I forgot to point those out at the Arsenal Monument,
oh, okay.
and lots along here. So it's a great way to donate to the cemetery.
A lot of people do them to commemorate their pets.
Right.
Because they are not always, you can bury your pet here, but they're not always buried here. So you can see here some that we're
Well,
ready
see,
to
there's
install.
good dog Heidi.
Oh.
Yes.
Especially members of our canine corps
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
love to do that because this is one of their dog's favorite places sometimes.
Right, and we're not going to get over there, but on that fence at the farthest side of the cemetery, we do have a dog cemetery.
We call it the Kingdom of Animals.
Yes. And I understand from one of the groundskeepers that we have turtles
Oh, in the creek.
in the.
We call it the doggy day spot. But I guess because there weren't dogs here for a couple months and turtles made themselves at home.
That's why my dogs love the doggy day spot so much.
So there, I mean, you talked about what can you plant? Somebody's. Well, at least they have tomato cages. I'm not sure if they're.
I don't think they're tomatoes. I
Right.
think they're just using them for guidance and protection.
Right.
That is one of the restrictions. You can't have any fruits or vegetables because it attracts the wrong sort of animals.
The wrong sort of animals. Yes.
But herbs and flowers and more than enough.
Were these trees planted just for the memorial?
No. This is strictly for the 9/11. And when we get to the end of this, there's the biggest surprise ever. So we're coming up on a totem pole, which was a gift from the Lummi Indians in the Pacific Northwest, and it's made from 3 western red cedar trees. I'll just kind of prepare you for what we're about to see. So this was our gift from the Lummi Indians, and it's filled with iconography. That's the war side. You can see the person in the eagle's mouth. This is the peace side. The thing that I like to point out, the master carver is Jewel Praying Wolf James, and he was guided to put a turtle on as part of the iconography. And it turns out that our local Piscataway Indians, that's their sign, a turtle. So he was moved to do that. now another fun thing. I was giving this tour, and I went through I went under the canopy, and when we got to the end of the tour, a lady took me aside and said that I had violated sacred space.
By going underneath?
By going through it.
Oh.
So when we get here, I leave it to people to decide whether they want to go around or through. I've been going around.
Take that advice. And when was this?
This was right at, like a year or two after the 9/11.
Oh.
Yes.
Beautiful.
And trucked here in huge trucks. It was my understanding, and maybe Sarah can verify this, that at some point they were going to move it to the
Kingman Island.
well, to Kingman Island, and then after that to the American Museum of
I have not heard that.
Yeah.
I know it spent one day at the Pentagon. That was it. It was intended to commemorate.
Right.
There's a sister pole in New York as well as Shanksville, Pennsylvania. So this
Right.
was to commemorate the Pentagon.
So yes, I heard it was going to be moved to the Museum of the American Indian, which would be a good place for it. However,
Then we would miss it.
I wish it would stay here.
Yeah.
The Kingman Island part, that was Kingman Island is an island in the Anacostia River, and the District of Columbia has been trying for years to find some purpose for it, and they've had many plans and ideas. They never seem to pan out. I'm particularly happy that this is still here, until if it moves to the museum. But again, I hope not. So Ryan, are you going to?
I'll go around.
You're going to go around.
Go this way?
So we're heading to my other favorite.
Yes. It must be like your favorite sugar. Yeah.
Oh, no, this one's my favorite.
Right.
Well, it seems like there's so many unique things that it must be almost impossible to decide what your favorite one.
Right. Right. So this around the Orms family is also buried here, but on the other side of the monument is the gravesite of Belva Ann Lockwood. But before we get there, we've been talking about trees and plants and stuff like this. These are cedar. These trees are cedar, and they have a scent which insects don't like. So lots of things in old cemeteries like this have these things left over for pests and things which were a problem at the time. So this is cedar, and you can smell it.
Yeah.
So this is Belva Ann Lockwood, and she ran for president on a national ticket 3 years before the suffrage movement. Several years before the suffrage movement passed. She died 3 years before it passed. Before the thing passed. She lived in Ohio, left her children with her parents, went to law school, which we think is it was called the National University. We now think that's part of GW, the GW Law School. When she was enrolled, and she was allowed to enroll, but was not allowed to attend classes because she would distract the men. So she studied alone, and then when it came time to graduate, which she had the marks and everything to do, she could not walk. Nobody would sign her diploma. President Grant actually signed her diploma.
Wow.
And then her next act was to go lobby before Congress. Then she couldn't practice before the court. They wouldn't let a woman practice before the court. So she kept working at that till that was allowed. And her very first case before the court was to allow an African American man to practice before the court.
And when you say court, you're actually talking about the Supreme Court.
I'm actually talking about the Supreme Court, yes.
Wow.
not just any
Yes,
old
not any old court, right.
The court.
So I didn't mention she had 4,000 votes, so it must have been 4,000 men who voted for her.
Wow.
There's all kinds of interesting things about her.
She sounds like a tough lady.
She's a tough lady. She's the, ultimate go-getter. And with lots of bricks in front of her.
And while we're walking, we have a couple comments on Facebook. One says, I hope we get to see William Wirt's site and the interesting story of how the politician Jim Graham was connected. I'm not sure if we'll get to see William Wirt because that's over by where the wedding tent is. But then
We can certainly. I'm sorry.
we can point at it.
Yes, we can.
And then Hillary says, thank you very much. I am very excited to see the place where my grandmother is. I will show it to my dad.
So, what can we ask? Who her grandmother?
Sure. Hillary, if you want to let us know who your grandmother is, we might be walking by. And so Sherry pointed that out to Hillary, and she said, this is the place your mom and grandmother is buried. It is so beautiful. So it sounds like it's the whole family.
So please chime in if you can. It's from these family stories that we get a lot of the really interesting stories to tell.
Yes, absolutely. And we actually have a page on our website called the Connections Project. So if you want to, I guess Google that might be the easiest way to find it, but you can share your stories with us and tell us, and that's how we can add you to the tour.
Well, in fact, since we're standing here by Belva and Lockwood, we have the Dead Man's Run, and I was here, giving tours to whoever wanted to, and a Miss Lockwood showed up.
Oh, in costume?
No, just plain. She knew that her grandmother was here.
Wow.
And
that's cool.
yes, it was very cool. So keep those stories coming.
Yeah, I actually just heard from a family this past week. They're the greats of William Wirt. And so much so that even though the family's last name isn't Wirt anymore, they named their sons Wirt. So there's Wirt the first and Wirt the second, I believe.
I actually have a great uncle, Linthicum. He was a representative back in 1911.
Oh, does he have a...
He's got a stone over there.
Nice.
Wonderful. Well, would you like to point it out?
I haven't found it yet.
Okay.
We might have to teach you how to use the app.
Yeah. I recently just learned that
It is handy as long as it doesn't direct you over to 3 blocks.
So we're heading straight for a little while, and then again, it's kind of a materials look. There's the only zinc monument here, which is
Yes, that's the easiest one.
I haven't seen the others.
I was over, I think by Marion Collard. Is that how you say it?
Okay.
Over there the other day, and I found one.
Okay, wonderful.
I heard there's a hollow tomb somewhere around here.
Yes, that's what we're going to
Oh,
look at.
that's where okay.
So there was only one company that made them, as far as I have been able to learn, and you can see it. It's that little bluish. It's turned blue, but it's sort of exceptionally beautiful. Let's go.
Yeah, right there. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Let's go over and take a look at it.
And you said this is made of what material?
Zinc.
Zinc. Okay.
And it had to stop being used because they needed the alloy for the war. So go ahead, knock on it.
Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, it's hollow.
It is hollow, but you can see how nice the definition is. All these things have been here since
Wow.
1886.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and Sarah had a story that people used to hide booze in there.
How do you do that?
Well,
Do you see the little screws on the nameplate?
Here?
Yeah. So they would unscrew that, put it,
Oh.
say it's over in the McLeod vault, and pick it up, trade it out, put your money in there, whatever it is you were doing.
And who's buried here?
This is Josiah McLeod. But the other thing that I wanted to point out is that he was a Mason, and there's a couple of very famous Masons buried here. One of them is Benjamin Brown French, which I'll point out as we walk by, who I credit for keeping Booth from killing Lincoln at his second inaugural.
Oh.
Before he actually succeeded.
Before he actually did.
Oh, okay.
Apparently Booth was at the Capitol that day.
Oh, wow.
And French just was walking by with a general or something. Well, we'll talk about that when we get there.
Okay.
So,
Teaser for later.
Yeah.
Do they still make zinc tombs?
the thing,
Do they still make tombs like that?
no.
No, I don't think there's a company out there that.
No,
makes
there was
those.
just one as far as I've ever been able to find out.
They went out of business.
Yes.
Although I'm interested in zinc. It might be a good choice. Really holds up well.
Yes. And that's a beautiful patina on it, I think.
Yeah.
Does Congressional Cemetery do green burial?
Yes.
Yeah, we're actually, I think, the only cemetery on the East Coast, if not in this area, that is certified to do so. A lot of cemeteries also won't let you do them because they require vaults and things like that. So, yep. We have-
Apparently, if you're a Jewish cemetery, that's very acceptable to do. But
Yeah.
but you have to be certified to do that by whatever jurisdiction you're in. So let's keep going. We're going to turn around to the right here, to the left. Sorry. Oh, maybe we won't.
Yeah. You want to cut down a few?
yes.
Go a couple rows over?
Yes. Well, we can go and see Mammy, which I usually love to point out. This part here on the right was a children's cemetery during the 1819 Spanish flu.
Really?
Yes. And so if you see a grave with a little lamb on it,
Yeah.
that means an infant was buried there. But many of the graves from here on this side are from that era.
And what they did was they actually sold half the plots. So you didn't need the whole plot 6 feet, so they were cheaper. But what also happened was that people were buried as they died during that influenza. So even if 2 children in the same family died and they were buried over here, they might be buried a couple rows apart because they were buried one right after the other. It's not like a family plot.
Right, right. And then maybe I'll get to point out what I'm not supposed to point out.
Okay.
One of the many wonderful things we do here. I don't see them yet. So you can see one thing down at the very top of those mausoleums.
Those look like beehives.
They are.
Oh, wow.
It's not that we're not supposed to point them out. It's just that many people are frightened of bees.
I am
And-
not frightened of bees.
And,
I love bees.
well, it's all part of what makes this place so unique.
Absolutely. Many of them.
Yes. And I understand the beekeeper will let you, she keeps a suit in her car, and if you kind of luck into her, she will allow you to go with her.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure if we can get through here. I want to go to the So this is the Thompson Mausoleum, and this is a difficult subject to talk about, but these are the Thompson family, and at that lower right is Mammy, and she was their caregiver for most of her life. She's buried with her family, but not named. I find that fascinating and kind of always point that out. African American people were and are always allowed to be buried here. But there was initially there was a place, there was an area where they could be buried. Now that is gone, luckily. But this is an interesting historical.
What year was she?
She was she was.
I think it was 1914.
Yeah, right. It's not named. It's not numbered.
Does the honey get harvested?
Yes, and you can buy some in the gatehouse.
Well, not yet.
Not yet.
So usually we have the honey as a public program that people, if they want to, they can come and help. But I don't think we're going to do that this year. I think they're just going to be as quick and efficient as possible and harvest the honey that way. So there will be an announcement if and when the honey is available.
So you used the word green, which is interesting. That there's green burials, and then there's being green, which is having bees to pollinate and everything. It's just so wonderful. When we have goats, they're over beyond that fence over there. And I didn't know it, but goats do nothing but eat and sleep. If they're not sleeping, they're eating. It's amazing to watch. And so every child in the neighborhood is there pressed against the fence, watching them.
Yeah.
You know.
And one of their favorite things to eat is poison ivy.
Yes.
Wow,
Yeah,
really?
they love it. It's like candy.
Can they come to my house?
Yeah. So there's lots and lots of ways to be green
Get the
here.
right permits and you can do it.
Are we going to do it this year? Do you know?
No goat eating. We are going to do goat yoga, but no invasive species this year.
Okay.
Or- yeah.
My fiance she and I signed up for the goat yoga. We're very excited.
Yes, there are tickets still available for goat yoga. Don't forget to get your tickets for soul strolls. And I believe we have our movie night next Friday, or this coming Friday, so you can get your tickets for that too.
What's the movie?
She's the Man.
Great movie.
It's based on Shakespeare, so that's why we're
Right.
Is that a bathhouse?
Yes, that was a Girl Scout project last year.
Oh, fun.
And someone asked if the bats were there, and we said, well, there's bat poop, so we think there's bats.
Yes.
Otherwise known as checked.
Right. Bats are kind of dying of a bad reputation just now with this pandemic. They, well, not dying, but
The reputation's business.
their reputation has been right. But in fact, in an evening's feeding, they eat thousands of insects.
Which, along with being green, then we don't have to spray for bugs.
I should get one.
I'll take some bats, please.
Taking some tips.
So we'll just walk along here. We're going to pass William Wirt's gravestone right there. So we can stop and take a good picture of it.
So if there's an empty space, does that mean it's possibly you could be buried here, or does that mean there might be someone there?
Yes. The answer is yes. So we have a whole GIS map where we can go and look at every plot and see what's available and see what's occupied. Yeah. could also be a green burial where they decided not to do any sort of marker.
So there, speaking of no markers, there are so many people buried here without markers, and so many people connected to the Lincoln administration. One of the people who's buried here with no marker is the bartender who served Booth at the Red Star Tavern just before the assassination.
Oh my goodness.
And it's over there.
Over in that general direction.
Right, we're heading that way.
Is the majority of people who are buried here, are they from like the Civil War era? Or
No, there's still very modern burials. So for the family of William Wirt, here's his gravestone. And you'll notice the big granite plinths before the store there. The grave was vandalized at some point, and his skull was taken out and returned. We're glad to have it. We're glad to have it back. It was verified by the Smithsonian, whose it was, and so on. And so, I'm thinking nobody's going to move that.
Yep, but as we mentioned, the cemetery was a little neglected in the past, so.
Right. And over there, we can't see it that well, but the obelisk with the reading around the kind of lower end of it, that's Archibald Henderson. He was the first commandant of the Marine Corps. So he's over there.
The story about him is that his portrait was hanging on the house.
And when the first woman was enrolled in the Marine Corps, his picture fell off the wall.
How convenient.
Yeah, he was many years removed from women in the Marines.
Right.
Seems like there's a lot of first people here.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so back to your question about people being buried in the Civil War. With the old part where we started, there's burials back to 1807.
Yes.
And then there's a lot of heroes of the War of 1812 buried here. Civil War, all the way up, even people being buried in the 70s and 80s when it wasn't a great place to walk around. And then still there's people being buried here on a regular basis.
Right. So we're going to just look over there. We can. It's back to Lincoln, that gray obelisk over there. We can walk over if you like. That's a memorial to Dr. James Hall, and he was attending. He was a physician of Mrs. Lincoln's, and although he wasn't the surgeon in charge, he was there at the hotel when Lincoln was dying, and he was there at the site. That's Dr. Hall.
We actually have so many connections. There's a tour/program called Lincoln's Last Day. And a lot of people who were connected with Lincoln.
Right, and one of the things I didn't mention when we were at the Arsenal Monument, it was Lincoln who led the funeral cortege to this site to bury those women.
Oh, wow.
So he was touched many people in here in many ways.
Yeah.
But Lincoln's not buried here.
Lincoln,
No, he went on a world tour, a national tour, and he was buried in his hometown, whichever one. There's a lot of them.
So we're heading down to the public vault.
You mentioned trees. Do you know what kind of tree this is?
This is a magnolia. This one is a magnolia. But in general, I think that's also a program that we have going, isn't it, to identify the trees?
We would love a Boy Scout to take that on as an Eagle Scout project.
Right.
Great idea.
But if you
Boy
have
Scouts out there.
if you have a cell phone,
Yeah.
I have Plant Snap in my phone,
Oh.
so
that's a
you
great
could
one.
find a tree that you think is beautiful or whatever, and snap it and have it identified, and then maybe point it out to someone in the gatehouse, and we could put a little plaque on it as or something like that, because
Yeah.
I think that's important knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is the public vault. I don't believe it's open today, but many times it is. It'll definitely be open during our soul strolls. There would be many reasons why you would be buried in the public vault. Many of them were because at the time you died, the weather might be not. You may not be able to take the body home and have a regular burial. The ground might be frozen or something like that. So you might have stayed here. But 3 presidents were buried here, and Dolly Madison. They were Zachary Taylor. William Henry Harrison was here longer than he was in office, and John Quincy Adams briefly. Dolly Madison was here for 3 years. Her son, who's also buried over there, unmarked, John Payne Todd, kind of squandered all their money. James Madison was apparently extremely generous with his adopted son, but he just was kind of a scallywag, I understand, and ran through the money. And when it came time to bury his mother and take her back to I was trying to say Monticello and Montpelier, the money was
Now you're
gone.
gonna start rumors.
Right. She was rescued for a while by the Costons, who are relatives of the Shrivers apparently. So she went into that grave for a little while before she went home to Montpelier. So
How many people could be in the vault at one time?
I would say, judging by the size, 10.
I was gonna say 10.
Yes.
Although if you were to go in there now, you wouldn't be able to put anybody in there because the retrofitted it and it's just a room at this point.
Right.
It is a room, however, that is too small to be open for soul strolls. So we're going to keep it closed because we don't want too many people in that small of an area.
Right. Usually, when we have soul strolls, that's open and there's a bar in there, and it's
There'll be a bar, just not in.
yeah, it's all very
All open areas.
right.
Was it a free vault, or did you have to pay money on a daily basis to?
I'm not sure how that. To be honest, I'm not sure how that was paid for. I think probably the fee was very low.
I think it was $5.
Yes.
And if you were a member of Congress, you got to stay there for free.
Yes.
Lucky deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they helped finance it, and that was one of the caveats. Like, fine, but we get to stay for free.
Right. So at this path, we're gonna turn right. Oh, this is new. This signage is new.
I think they redid it. I think it was in bad shape, so they got
I see.
new ones.
I see.
Is that something the family does, or is that part of?
Yeah,
your
typically
team?
if either a family or family member or an organization, I think that one may have been the Boy Scouts and DAR did that.
Gotcha.
Right. So this is a typical kind of table vault that we talked about. That's another one which is fallen. They just by design are a little bit fragile. There's huge slabs on. Well, we don't see one now, but relatively speaking, kind of delicate legs. So this one isn't. It's on a box, but some are just on legs, and that makes them a little frail if there's any movement in the ground or anything.
And are these Are they buried underneath it,
Yeah,
or are they
well,
buried inside of it?
inside there, but where there's legs, it's under.
Okay.
They're under, yes.
It looks like a new vault. Is that new? Still
That is
open?
new. That's John Bradamus, who's a congressman.
Oh,
And that's, I would say, no older than 2 years.
2 years. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's Dakota red granite. And it took, I would say, almost a year to build.
If you look on Google Earth, that photo of it, of us right now, is them constructing that.
Oh.
Yes. So we're heading down to there's a cross path there.
Is that the jail in Canada?
Yes,
Oh.
yes. That's where we tease if you want to have lunch when the lunch bell goes off.
How come all of those grave sites look the same?
So those are, I'm glad you asked that. Those are cenotaphs, and they were designed by Benjamin Latrobe. And in the cemetery, there's 176 of them. The practice was they stopped building them, using them in, I believe, 1876. And the material is Aquia sandstone. So there was a newspaper wag who said now he understood the horror of death. But they're neoclassical. They were such a different design for the time. It was just totally out there as a design, and just kind of form your own opinion about them. They were a very advanced design at the time, and not appreciated as I understand it.
And you got one whether you liked it or not.
Right.
Gotcha.
Lynn, I don't know if we have an answer to this, but Mark asked, any interesting stories about Owen Thomas Edgar, 1831 to 1929, the last U.S. survivor of the Mexican War? He's over in Range 91, Site 357, so I think that's a little outside of our...
No, but I'm glad that he asked. What's the name?
Owen Thomas Edgar.
Okay, because I will find out and take a picture of his grave if he'd like that, and then do it through the gatehouse.
Yeah, we might make a post about him and see if we can find some information. I'm not sure I'm familiar with his
Because
story.
I've already said it, but I'll say it again. It's these interactions that keep the stories interesting. So here I'm kind of looking because, believe it or not, I can't always find it at this time. So this is John Alexandria Washington Clairvaux, who he's named Alexandria Washington because the rumor has it he was born on a ferry from Alexandria to Washington. However, he was the lead DC detective on the Lincoln investigation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, John A.W. Clark. They didn't have room for Alexandria in Washington.
right, Clairvaux is the name is,
Clairvaux, sorry.
yeah.
What material is that? I've
So,
noticed some
yeah.
of the stones are harder to
Okay,
read
so
than
that, come over and touch it. This is marble.
Oh, okay. This is marble.
And see how it's deteriorating.
Yeah.
I mean, yes,
It's really rough.
very rough.
Yeah.
Yes.
Huh.
So, all of it.
So is this part of the conservation work then, is to try and
Well, what we do, there's a product called D2, and we take a little toothbrush, well, not a little toothbrush, but a not too big a toothbrush type of brush, and with this solution on it, and very carefully, mostly this is biological growth,
Okay.
so then we take a hose and hose it off. But we're not trying to, we're not trying to restore them.
Yeah.
We're trying to just keep them as is.
Preserved.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, because do that too many times and the words just come completely off because you've
Right.
gone down.
So that's
layers.
done very
Gotcha.
carefully, and again I've done it, and it's pretty interesting work actually. It's very careful, and it's fun to see this stuff go this biological growth disappear.
Yeah. So when it was first constructed, was it all white like this?
Probably, yeah.
Oh.
Well, this might have been a marble called statuarial, which is white and gray.
Oh, okay.
So some of these markings might be natural or to the stone.
So don't scrub too hard because it's not coming off.
Right.
Since you don't have a siren to tell you lunchtime, Lynn, I'm just going to give you a heads up. It's a little after 1.
Okay, so we might have to cut down our
Just let you know.
walk a little bit. Well, let me show John J. Edgar Hoover
Okay.
and Leonard Matlovich. And then the other fun story, my other favorite place, is William Thornton.
Okay.
Sounds good.
I'm sure you could do hours and hours of your tour here.
Jeff says he always has more stories than time.
Well, and that's the best of all circumstances. So this is the family plot of John J. Edgar Hoover. And all this was not done by the United States government, but friends of the FBI did this. It's, again, like so many things, because of the pandemic, it's overgrown. It's usually immaculately kept. But he is buried there with his mother and sister and everyone. And then the other thing, which my other favorite place, so maybe I'll just talk as we're walking back to the. So this red stone down here, Clyde W. Tolson, was J. Edgar Hoover's friend for life.
They were such good friends that he left his entire estate to Clyde rather than his brother or sister.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Must have been very good friends.
Yes.
Did they work together?
No.
Yes, they both worked at the FBI.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, and I think J. Edgar would pick up Clyde every morning. They'd have breakfast together and go to work together.
Oh, I did not know that they worked together. Yes.
Why is he over here and then Hoover's over there?
Well, they died at different times.
So Hoover's buried in his family plot.
Yeah.
So this was really the closest Clyde could get
Yeah.
because all these are family plots and, dibs.
Right. And then this is a little bit of a neighborhood. This is the grave of Leonard Matlovich, who was given got the Medal of Honor and then dishonorably discharged because he came out as a gay man. So his some of the sayings on his grave, I always ask people whether they think they are angry or sad. The pink triangles are Nazi symbols of homosexuality. Again, we see the stones on top of the thing, but if you'd like to read that, Sarah, that to the.
Where it says, when I was in the military, they gave me a medal for killing 2 men and a discharge for love of one.
So, yeah.
Is there a reason why one triangle's down and one is up?
That's just a Nazi symbol.
I can't remember which
was down,
And
right.
so that's the original symbol, and I think they are reclaiming it by turning it right side up. I think was what I was told.
Okay, thank you. And then in this same neighborhood, there's Gator Swan over there, who's not dead yet, but wanted to be sure that when he did die, he would be buried where he was closest to the people he wanted to be. Okay, let's keep going. So we talked about Mr. Taltaval. His grave is in this area someplace.
We found it last time.
Yes, we.
It's back a little.
Yeah, it's unmarked. Sorry about that. We over there is on that wall. Well, I'll just keep walking.
Okay.
On that wall, I was here one Saturday, and lots of Chinese Americans were here, and they were having a Qingming ceremony.
Really?
Apparently it's a ceremony once a year. I've never seen it. I saw it that one time, luckily, and never again. But Chinese people find their ancestors and honor them that day. They knew that their ancestors had been moved back to China.
Are there any Native Americans buried here?
Yes, there are. There's Tajay over there, who was the son of Cochise, an Apache chief. There's Pushmataha over there.
We'll see Pushmataha when we go over to William.
Yes.
I think there are 13 different Native American tribes represented
Right.
here.
Wow.
And then those angels over there.
Oh yes.
My other favorite story. They are the Hall sisters, and when they were digging for the National Museum of the American Indian, they found all this beautiful china, champagne corks, and so on. And so it was determined that these ladies ran a brothel in that area.
Not just a brothel, but like
The brothel.
fanciest, best brothel.
Right.
Hi.
And so the word hooker comes from General Hooker's men who visited the house.
No way.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, was not illegal at the time. Although she got cited a couple times for running a disorderly house. 'Cause I guess she couldn't keep everybody
Right.
in line.
And-
But I mean, she was a, I believe, entrepreneur is how she is listed in one of our logs.
Wow.
Yeah. And for a while, somebody, I think I saw it again the last time I was here, for a while somebody kept putting a scarf around her neck. And we'd take it,
Oh, yes.
It's on the
Yeah.
arms right now.
okay, and we'd take it down, and then next time somebody would look, it would be back up, and so on. Finally, we left it up because we were worried about who was climbing up and down the statue.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there significance to the scarf? Or
No,
do
they
you
just
not-
wanted to dress her
No
up,
idea?
I guess, give her a little flair.
We've not met the person who does it.
Well, at the British Embassy, somebody kept putting a rose in Winston Churchill's head for a long time.
Oh.
And they'd take it off, and somebody'd come by again, and there'd be another rose. And somebody said they should have put a cigar in his.
Actually, he probably would have been mad about wasting a perfectly good cigar by
Yeah.
putting it in his statue.
Yeah, maybe. So I just want to take a little bit longer tour because I just want to walk by one grave. That's our the signer of the Declaration of Independence, and Vice President under James Madison.
that there's some plaques next to some of these tombstones.
Yes.
Are there?
Well,
Okay, these are just for the little
Right.
description.
And actually,
Okay.
Uriah Tracy, I believe, was the first senator to be buried here.
Oh, okay.
So this is Elbridge Gerry, and it's from his name that gerrymandering comes from. He drew the line. He drew the voting lines to look like a salamander. So that's where the word gerrymandering comes from.
Oh.
And he's a signer of the Declaration of Independence. He was vice president to James Madison, and pretty special.
And I believe he's the only signer of the Declaration of Independence buried in the area.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right. So here's kind of one of those table graves. And you can see why that might be unstable. Well, this one is better because there's some airspace, but you can see why a design like this could be unstable.
And that's what material?
This is marble.
Marble.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yes.
Home trip used before or after.
Yes. So this is Pushmataha, and he fought with in the yes. I just need to read this for sure. He was a Choctaw, and he fought with Andrew Jackson in the war, and so this is one of our things. And somebody has left a beautiful stone there, a beautiful vase there, and so on.
What does the plaque on the ground read?
So that's the Continental Society. I'm not sure what that is, Sarah. I know the DAR puts a sign there. I'm not sure what this one is. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I don't know what the Continental Society is. Does it have words underneath, like Continental Society or something? Daughters of Indian Wars.
Oh.
I believe I haven't seen that. And again, that's something to look up. To my knowledge, that's the only sign like that.
I think there are a couple others because they were going to have a ceremony in April for Starlight Crow.
Oh.
And maybe put his plaque in or his, whatever you call it, medallion.
So we'll just stop here at William Thornton. He was by education a doctor, but he never practiced medicine. He in fact designed the Capitol. He was more interested in architecture. But when George Washington died, he came up with this grand plan of reanimating George Washington. And he had a plan to do that. He was going to put bellows in his mouth and blow up his lungs, keep him very warm, inject him with sheep's blood, and reanimate. He used the word reanimate him. Mrs. Washington declined the offer, so we don't know if that would have worked. But
I think we know what.
well, we could be optimistic.
I can imagine.
Yeah, maybe it's like CPR and a transfusion, like if he wasn't dead yet.
Right. Right. I think it's a fascinating story. So let's keep going.
And he is one of 2 non-members of Congress to have one of these cenotaphs.
Oh, okay. Who's the other one?
His name is Lear. Benjamin Lear.
Yes,
He's over behind us,
yes.
and I have been researching. I haven't figured out why he has one.
In a way, there's so much to learn. You kind of get on one thing, and
I would imagine.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's all about sharing that knowledge too, because just because Lynn knows it doesn't mean I know it.
Well, and none of us know everything.
Nope. Yeah.
So let's keep going. We're winding up our tour, but I like to show this grave because it's definitely on our way out. Okay, in this area is one of our most famous unmarked graves. Do you recognize that name, Ryan?
Last name is Harold. Herold.
No.
Think Lincoln.
Okay. I don't know.
Okay. All right. So Davy Harrell is buried here with his sister. He was one of the Lincoln conspirators. His family chose that his name would never show. So he is here, but not named.
Oh, okay.
And this, just as a matter of interest, is Florida, from the Florida Keys, Colonel Symington from the Florida Keys, and his daughter Florida.
So if he's not named, how do they know he's buried here?
I think our records show that.
Oh, okay.
Yes, but the family requested that his name never be shown.
I could understand that.
Yeah, they were originally buried at Fort Hood, and so they were moved from there.
Right,
His family asked for his body back so they could give him a proper burial.
right,
Gotcha.
right. Well, thank you, everyone. This is the end of our tour. If you have any questions, please ask the gatehouse, and we'll figure them out for you and answer you. It makes our tours even more special. Thank you.